BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Thomas Duncan, and this is the Scottish Football Podcast, back once again to kickstart your week with the final word on the weekend's action.
Chipped in again, Mr. Travis there! And Hearts have their equaliser! Oh, I think it actually might come off Nicky Devlin.
Hearts are bottom of the league despite a hard-fought draw at home to Aberdeen. It comes after City rivals Hibernian moved above them thanks to a massive win at Fir Park.
Gale knocks it for Campbell. Game over.
We'll also assess how significant a week it's been for Rangers after they followed up that spectacular win in Nice with a more prosaic performance in Perth.
Back across by Hadji. Chance! The ball's ended up on the back of the net. It might be an own goal.
And is Luke McCowan playing his way into Scotland squad contention?
Yeah, he's really settled in well, Luke, but he gets his reward for how hard he works. So pleased for him.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Right, joining me on this Sunday evening is Mark Atkinson, the sports editor of The Scotsman, and Kevin Thomson, former Rangers and Hibs midfielder. As we record, it's the evening of the Sunday, the 1st of December. Hearts v Aberdeen not long finished. I'm just in the door. We'll get into that and more in more detail. But first, gentlemen, your highlight of the Scottish football weekend. Kevin, do you want to do the honours?
Hard to get away from the Highbies, I suppose, Thomas. Brilliant result. One that obviously the group and Dave especially needed. Delighted for him. Obviously a friend of mine, so it's been a difficult start, to say the least. It's they've had to suffer a wee bit. They've had a lot of flack. We know what society we live in, driven by social media, so you have to expect when you represent big clubs like the Highbies, you don't produce the goods, you come under fire. But really professional performance against a stuffy team in Motherwell who seem to grind out good results. Getz has done a good job there, so it was. Don't quote me on it, but I'm sure the Highbies don't have the best record at Motherwell, so it was one that was. I'm pretty sure Dave's glass of wine on Saturday night was a wee bit more enjoyable than it has been for the last few weeks, to say the least.
For sure. Mark, what about you?
I was also going to go for Hibs, but I had a backup thinking Kevin might go down that route too, and I'll pick seeing Yanis Hadji starting for Rangers for the first time since May 2023 and actually putting in a good performance. A very talented footballer and long overdue his start for Rangers, in my opinion. Good choices.
Right, before we get into more depth on all the stories from the weekend, let's quickly run through the headlines. Scotland assistant John Carver has been appointed as head coach of Polish top-flight side Lechia Gdańsk. He'll assist Steve Clarke for the Nations League playoff with Greece in March, though. Hearts and Aberdeen rounded off the weekend with a 1-1 draw at Tynecastle. The result leaves the Edinburgh club bottom of the table and the Dons 4 points behind Celtic, having played a game more. Also on Sunday, Rangers ground out a 1-0 win over St Johnstone in Perth. The Ibrox club also confirmed Narecio Casanguiro will probably miss the rest of the season following knee surgery. On Saturday, Celtic routed Ross County 5-0, Dundee United beat St Mirren 2-0, Kilmarnock and Dundee drew 1-1, and Hibs earned a much-needed 3-0 win away at Motherwell. And in the Scottish Cup, Highland League outfit Fraserburgh produced the shock of the third round by beating League One side Annan Athletic 2-0. Right, let's start at Tynecastle, shall we? I'm just in the door. It was a full 108 minutes of football and players dropping like flies. It probably wasn't the best quality game, but compelling nonetheless. Who do you think, Mark, will be happy with a point?
Good question. I don't think I can't say that either man will be very happy or either team will be happy with a point. Hearts needed to win by 3 goals to jump back above Hibs. Didn't think that was ever going to happen. But that's them now 2 points adrift at the bottom of the table. And I don't think the Jambles will be particularly happy about that down Tynecastle way. Aberdeen, on the other hand, has 2 draws in a row now in the capital and just starting to see them slow down a little bit. I suppose that point keeps a decent gap between them and Rangers. I think it's 7 points now, but ultimately I think both teams required a win for various different reasons, and neither got it.
Yeah, it was compelling stuff, very finely balanced. Kevin, and that's 5 games without a win now for Hearts. They had lost their last 4, albeit the games have been pretty tough. Heidenheim, Celtic, Rangers, Cercle Bruges and Aberdeen, so it's been a tough run of fixtures for them. But I was speaking to Neil Critchley, before and after the game with the interviews, and it's kind of that way where performances have been quite encouraging, but the results aren't coming, and there's only so long a manager can keep saying, we're playing well, before the pressure really starts to come on, and the games are coming thick and fast. So, I mean, where do you think they need to improve to pick up those wins?
They need to score goals first and foremost, Thomas. I was just checking the stats there, obviously I wasn't at the game, but I think 15, 16 shots on goal again, albeit the quality off the back of that. I think the success rate off the back, I think 4 or 5 shots on target, but I think I'd looked at the table and I seen -9 goals, which is alarming. You think that they had Lawrence Shanklin last year, same again, don't quote me on it, but the best part of 28, 29, 30 goals. To think that he's in that team and to look at Hearts sitting rock bottom, I don't think anyone could have got a bet on it, to be honest. I do think the squad, and Nazy's a good mate of mine, I do think they signed a lot of the same types. When you think Gandanda, when you think of Spittle, when you think of that profile of player, all good players, but really similar. And then when you think a lot of people thought that Hearts rode their luck a wee bit last year, but they had Shanklin as the X factor. Unfortunately, that X factor is not quite firing all cylinders. So I would say the biggest alarming thing for me is, one, Shanklin's a top player, and that's not going to go away, but he's obviously going through a low confidence spell at the moment. He can't seem to also put the ball in the back of the net, and probably the squad have been reliant on him in the past. I think that's now evident that now he's not firing, they're starting to suffer, so they need to get that bit right as quick as possible, and I'm pretty sure if they do, Thomas, they'll start to climb the league.
Right, I'm going to chuck a positive and a negative at you, Mark, for Hearts. Positive, Moussa Drama came on, started his first game, looked bright, worked hard, was involved for the goal that ended up being a Nicky Devlin own goal. Negatives, those injuries. I mean, Stephen Kingsley looks like hamstring injury. He'll be out for a long time. He was in crutches. And Frankie Kent, a quad injury, and particularly Frankie Kent, who starts every week. That's pretty worrying with the volume of games Hearts have got coming up.
It is. Frankie Kent's one of the most underrated defenders in the Premiership and a mainstay of that Hearts defence. I don't think Craig Halkett brings the same level of security at this moment in time, although he's not played a lot of football. I suppose James Penrice comes in back in suspension to take the place of Kingsley going forward, and Penrice has been probably one of Hearts' best players this season, so that helps. But Kingsley's an experienced player who can play right across a back four or a back five. So yeah, worrying moments for Neil Critchley, given, as you say, the volume of matches. That's Moussa Drama just getting established now in the Hearts squad. He was left out entirely for a good month or so, and given the fact that Lawrence Shanklin is getting no backup from guys like Kenneth Vargas or Liam Boyce, they have to turn to someone like him and try and get more productivity in that final area. It's really hard for Hearts at the moment. They do play some nice stuff. I think they're well coached and well drilled under Neil Critchley. They do play a sort of slightly more aggressive style of football than they did previously. But ultimately, the results are really not much better than they were under Stephen Naismith. December's a huge month for them, and also January, because there'll be a lot of movement, I think, the transfer window, especially with the arrival of Tony Bloom's Jamestown Analytics. It's not panic time yet for Hearts, just like it wasn't panic time at Hibs a couple of weeks ago, but there needs to be swift improvement.
Yeah, as for Aberdeen, Kevin, Jimmy Tulane saying afterwards they need to kind of rediscover their rhythm. They've had 3 tough away games, lost at St Mirren, drew at Hibs when they thought they had the game won, and then a point at Tynecastle. I suppose the last 2 results in isolation aren't bad results, but they're maybe just missing a bit of spark. It's just not quite clicking the way it was at the start of the season.
Yeah, I suppose the flip of that, and I'm pretty sure Jimmy Tulane, I've wanted them to win every week, like as do the Aberdeen fans, but I think if you're realistic without downplaying it, I think any Aberdeen fan and anyone associated to the club, plus the manager, would snap your hand off for the start that they've made. I don't think they can expect to be plain sailing. I don't think you could envision the 2 Edinburgh clubs struggling the way they're struggling. So they've already got a mammoth head start on having an opportunity to secure third, albeit, listen, I know the Annies will be out in force to say that they're going to beat Rangers in the second, but I think if you're realistic and you're an honest football person, you would think where they've started, they've made a brilliant start. They play good football, and they're really aggressive with the ball. They've scored lots of goals. I think if you're an Aberdeen fan and you're part of that squad, you're delighted the way things have gone, albeit you're going to have a couple of bumps in the road. That's natural.
Yeah, Celtic at home next week, which will be a whole different test altogether, albeit they've won every game at Pittodrie this season, but that will be an interesting one on Wednesday night, and we'll see if Dimitar Mitov is also fit as well, having gone off at half-time and been replaced by Ross Doohan. So that's Tynecastle. Let's head over to Perth, where Rangers were 1-0 winners over St Johnstone, thanks to Jason Holt's own goal. Not the prettiest, Kevin, but for Rangers, I suppose it's just all about getting the 3 points because, they're way off the pace in terms of Celtic, but they can't afford to drop any more points. Really, it's that simple, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's the general consensus is when the fans are a wee bit unhappy when you're winning, you know kind of the way the story's going. So I think a brilliant result through the week. I don't think anyone could have seen that coming, but I have to say they could have scored a few more. They could have conceded a few more as well when you look how open the game was and how many chances were at either end. But I think to go to a tough place like St Johnstone, I don't think people should underestimate how difficult it is to play on a Thursday night and the energy that you have to travel to go there. It ain't an excuse, it's just reality. I've been there, I've lived it. And when you go as a Rangers player to McDiarmid Park, everybody wants to beat you. It's a cup final for St Johnstone. The game is ferocious. It's a fight. You have to have the mentality and the dig to get over the line. And listen, the group have got over the line, so they deserve the plaudits, albeit they'll be small ones, and albeit the fans will expect them to win their games. I think for the manager and the staff and the group of players, I think it gives them something positive to try and build on. But like you mentioned, Thomas, I think that's fair to say that they're only a result away from being in a bit of bother, really, and they're almost in that predicament that they can't afford to lose any more ground than Celtic if they're going to have any sort of fists come the second to hope that game can be one that they can try and narrow the deficit.
Yeah, they did improve after the break. They made the changes, Yilmaz and Balogun on at half-time. Robin Proper struggling again, though, Kevin. Is that worrying for you, that one of the Rangers centre-halves is, especially it seems domestically, just is struggling to cope with maybe the physicality? He was outpaced by Jack Sanders in that first half. Is it worrying, do you think?
Well, I think it's got to be. I think and he needs to learn quickly. I watched him against St Mirren and he had a torrid afternoon. I think he's probably underestimated, what playing against a stereotypical centre forward up here looks like. The hustle and bustle, the running the channels, the backing in, and a lot of people say, come on, that's normal. And now you're used to that, but you would beg to differ if you watch continental football or European football that sometimes, centre forwards are a wee bit more loose, it's more technical, whereas he's having to use body contact, he's in duels, he's in fights, he's having to scrap all the time. He's also, which is probably a wee bit unique for him, and a lot of people underestimate this, that centre halves for the old firm have to play in the halfway line. So you have to leave yourself exposed with 30, 40, 50 yards behind you. It's the way it feels. So near enough every time the ball turns over, you as a centre-back are going to have to run that channel with somebody that's strong, that's used to that wants to run that channel, that wants to get his team up the pitch, that's probably quite fast, quite body contact strong. I think he's struggling to adapt at the moment, but I think if he's a good player, which I think he is, I think he will adapt and he'll learn. The bit is, and the argument is, he has to learn really quickly.
Mark, it feels just a bit like Groundhog Day for Rangers at the moment. They turn up and play on a Thursday night, they look a pretty good team, some really excellent results. Turn up at the weekend and play domestically, and they're struggling for intensity, goals especially away from home. It feels like they just need something to break the cycle. I don't know what that is. I suppose it would be winning the League Cup in a few weeks, but that's obviously a difficult ask.
Yeah, three goals away from home in the league this season. It's a very low tally by any team standards, let alone Rangers. And the game today was instantly forgettable. It was just a really poor game of football, but I think Kevin made a really good point about how difficult it is to come away from somewhere like Nice in such a high-octane match and all the emotions of winning 4-1 away from home, and it's back down to earth. A 12 o'clock kickoff in Perth on a sort of reasonably cold afternoon. The pitch was bobbly. He just had to go and get the job done. And I think Philippe Clement afterwards said it wasn't an attractive game, and in fact his team is not playing attractive football in this type of match. But I think they're in a much better place than they would have been had they not won this match, and the pressure would have been really on. Breaking the cycle is difficult for this Rangers team because they are still evolving and they need time to evolve, but you don't get that time when you are an old firm club, in particular Rangers, and even more so when you have a rival like Aberdeen competing with them. It feels like a game-by-game existence for Rangers right now, but the positive for them is that they've come through this week in a good place. They've made progress in Europe and they've cut the gap down on Aberdeen. They also have a game in hand, and of course Aberdeen and Celtic both play each other on Wednesday, So should they beat Kilmarnock on Wednesday, they're going to make ground on at least one of them. So I think this should be put down as a positive week for Rangers, but there is room for improvement, obviously.
Quick word on St Johnstone as well, Mark. 4 defeats in their last 5, but it's another decent performance. They play some nice stuff under Simo Valakari, but again, it's that thing about translating that into results, isn't it? Albeit, you're not expected to beat Rangers even at home.
Yeah, Simo Valakari spoke really well after the match. First time I've seen St Johnstone in the flesh since he came in. I was actually quite impressed with the way they played, but they couldn't deal with Rangers' counter-press. Rangers actually fought for the ball really well afterwards. Valakari said that he believes his team's got much more scope to grow and that they're working really hard, and he believes they'll get better. And I think what St Johnstone fans can really take from him is that the style of football is night and day in comparison to what was happening under previous regimes. And they do have good forward players that can get them goals. I'm not concerned about St Johnstone at this stage.
Okay, that's Sunday's action. Let's go to Saturday's games now, and the standout result, as Kevin touched on at the top of the show, Hibs 3, Motherwell 0 at Fir Park. I just felt like, Kevin, you could almost hear the collective sigh of relief from anyone connected with Hibs after that victory yesterday. It was so important. They built on what they did against Aberdeen midweek, but to go and deliver it, what was the difference, do you think? What was different from what we've seen already so far this season?
Just think they are a good team. They have got good players, and people say, are a good team. Listen, they've got good players. But I think it's alarming when you look at the table and you think that, up until the weekend they'd only won one game. It's mind-boggling, really, and not because I've got any alliance to the club, but they've also had scenarios where they've been well in control of the games. They've had men sent off. It's not an excuse, because everybody can look for a bad pass or a bad goalkeeping mistake or a defender gets caught in the ball and, we should have won this game, we should have won that game. Unfortunately, the table doesn't lie, but I do think they're more than capable. Thomas, you go on and winning 3 or 4 games on the bounce. That might be minus potentially playing against a Celtic, but I certainly think they've got the squad. I think Dave knows the players better than anyone. I think I'm probably echoing a lot of people's opinion that you cannot keep on changing managers. You cannot have a bad run of results and all of a sudden you have 5 managers in the space of 2 years. It's unacceptable for a club like Hibs, and I think they have to show some sort of resilience, some sort of grit and determination when things are going wrong. And I think if you had somebody that you wanted that within, it would be Dave, and the players have to rise to that. I think they've had a lot of stick, a lot of unwelcomed attention. Even ex-players, people like Marvin Bartley, for instance, digging players out. There's been a lot kicking up on social media, but I think if you're a player, you back yourself, you stick your chest out, and they've done that on Saturday. They got a brilliant result, scored 3 really good goals, and hopefully they can kick on now.
Yeah, Celtic away next, though, unfortunately for Hibs, doesn't get any easier. But how significant was the clean sheet, do you think, Kevin? Because there's been a lot of talk about the goalkeeper. They've gone in and out and the mistakes they've been making, but to keep a clean sheet as well must be huge for the confidence.
Yeah, and there's probably another one that they've not scored enough goals and conceding too many. It's a bad recipe, really, but you think the stick, and I see it, I'm on social media myself, and I've been that person before. I see Rocky Bashiri getting a lot of stick, and then he comes up trumps through the week.
Into the middle, the header across, Bashiri! Rocky Bashiri with his first goal for Hibs, and somehow Hibs are level. What an extra time!
And then all of a sudden it's his birthday, then he gets a clean sheet. It's amazing how things can turn so quickly in football. So I suppose my echo to that would be, don't speak too soon. Back the players. You're a supporter of the club for a reason. We all like them on. It's humanity. It seems that people like to grumble and
Scottish football, isn't it?
Yeah, it's listening to that. And I'm just looking for a fire, but I want to see people do well. Listen, whether it's, I don't want to see the Jambos down at the bottom of the league. I want to see the Everton clubs thriving. I want to see young players get opportunities. I want to see teams play good football. I might be a bit naive, but listen, when you get older, you probably appreciate that a wee bit more. And listen, there's more to life than going on social media and slagging people off.
Time is against us in the Scottish Football Podcast as ever, Mark. So we'll move on to Celtic 5, Ross County nil. A bit of a non-contest, but I think one of the standout things, obviously from Celtic's point of view, they make 6 changes without a hitch. But also Luke McCowan's performance. How impressed have you been by him?
Very impressed by Luke McCowan. Difficult to move from a club like Dundee to Celtic, especially when you're a boyhood fan, because it puts extra pressure on yourself. I think Brendan Rodgers has managed him really well. He's given him a couple of cameo appearances where he's played well from the bench. And then when he's asked him to come into the team from the start, he's delivered for him. This felt like the ideal match to make some changes. Ross County don't travel well, and Celtic would have a lot of the ball. And McCowan excelled in the role that he was given. Lupo Moravcik was there watching, former Celtic playmaker. He came on to the halftime draw. Some people who were there say that McCowan reminded them a little bit of the Mercurial Slovakian. I suppose the goal now for McCowan is to probably get involved in what you would call higher stakes matches. Will he start against Aberdeen on Wednesday at Pittodrie, where it's going to be a tougher test? No doubt about that. I suspect not. I suspect he'll turn back to his trusted 3 or 4 midfielders that are ahead of him. But it's just great to see him doing so well. And you hope that McCowan can progress through the winter, because if he does, I think he should be mentioned certainly in the Scotland squad, because he's got that little bit of something different about him that makes him stand out from others. But he's got to keep progressing. But yeah, a fantastic performance by him on Saturday, and long may it continue.
As a former midfielder and now coach as well, Kevin, are you an admirer of Luke McCowan?
Yeah, I think he's top drawer, to be honest. I think he's got it all, really. I think he can handle the ball. I think he's made to really be successful at Celtic Park, the way they dominate the ball, and he's a risk taker. He can handle it in tight areas. He can see a pass. I think he's probably next part. I think if he wants to really stamp himself, is to start chipping in with some goals to get that tally up, to be a bit different. But I certainly think, you know what we just mentioned there, you know, moving for Dundee, brilliant club obviously, but to move to such a big club in Celtic, and to move into such a successful team as well, with so much money spent in the summer, so many players that have been there, seen it and done it, such a difficult nut to crack to get in there and try and make some sort of difference. But you know, I'm a huge fan of him. I think I think Dundee do really well with young players. It gives them a great platform, and I'm pretty sure he'll be ever grateful for the opportunities that he got at Dens, and I've got no doubt that he'll eventually become, you know, part of the squad on a regular basis as well, i.e. the national team. So I've got no doubt he'll go on and have a really successful career.
Just before we wrap up, Mark, Dundee United's 2-0 winners against St Mirren. Great win for them, but we can't really talk about that game, sadly, without talking about the VAR calls. What did you make of that game and just the overall madness of VAR there in that match?
Yeah, not the best weekend for VAR, some would say. Firstly, Dundee United going under the radar, playing really well, getting good results. I thought Jack Walton was lucky not to get a red card.
It's another big kick towards Olasanya. Olasanya's got pace, we know that. He's touched it by Jack Walton and he's taken down. Now Walton could be in trouble here. Oh, it's only yellow for the Dundee United goalkeeper. Matthew McDermott, the referee, doesn't think that's a red. Let's have a look at that one again. He catches Olasanya big time, and it is quite high, but Olasanya's knocked the ball towards the corner flag, and maybe that's why it's just a yellow.
I just felt that he's come out at speed and his foot's high. I think it met the threshold for me for a red card. That obviously would have changed the complexion of the game entirely, and I was a bit surprised that VAR didn't sort of recommend a red card, but here we are. I don't like talking about VAR too much, especially when you've got good football, but we can't ignore this occasion. The penalty incident, yeah, difficult one. I think you've got people that will be upset that it ends up being a red card and a penalty, but I think there's probably arguments for and against that one. I think the Walton one for me is the biggie, because it comes at a point where the game is still very much in the balance. We want to try and eradicate those challenges. Goalkeepers should have the same treatment as other players outfield for me.
Yeah, it was controversial to say the least. And let's just finish with a quick word on Dundee and Kilmarnock's 1-1 draw. Again, it's probably a point neither manager wants. Old foes, Derek McInnes and Tony Docherty. They've played 3 times in like the last few weeks. Dundee and Kilmarnock. It's been some of the games have been crazy. 3-2s. This one a bit more sedate. But I don't think either will walk away too happy. Kevin, Kilmarnock struggling at the bottom of the table a bit, but you know Derek McInnes' experienced as we've mentioned no panic for Hearts yet or Hibs, so I guess it's the same with Kilmarnock.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be losing any sleep over it really. I think he'll trust what he does. He'll trust his group. He'll know that. I remember speaking to him one time down when we done one of the games down in London, and I was quite refreshed to think he's meticulous, and I've never spent too much time with him, but I was picking his brain obviously when I was down there, and he spoke about like how important it is to always be in games. And listen, you could go and probably find a few results where they've been turned over a few times, no doubt, in certain games. But one thing about the Derek McInnes team is they're always in games and they're always giving themselves opportunity to pick up points. So It stuck with me a wee bit, that, because obviously when you're at the top of the league, it's maybe a different mentality to have, and you're expected to win, blah, blah, blah. But I suppose, all due respect to Kelly, even though they're a brilliant club, they have to suffer a wee bit where they might win a couple of games, lose a couple of games, draw one, or so on and so on. So I don't think you can expect to win every game if you're a kind of commodity player as such, but I think they'll be okay. And then a kind of wee touch point on Tony Dodd. I think he's done a brilliant job since he went to Dens. Plays good football, gives young players opportunities. I think the academy, Stevie Rice, obviously a good mate of mine up there. I think they're a club they're in a good place.
Okay, time to wrap things up. Many thanks to Kevin Thomson and Mark Atkinson, and thank you for listening. Remember, we'll be here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every weekday morning, so make sure you don't miss out. Just subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. It's been another epic weekend in Scottish football. Until next time, it's bye for now.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.